Pop culture is dead. According to this article in The Atlantic, this is the worst ever era of American pop culture. Basically, we're not getting anything new. Right?
No,
I mean,
you
what?
don't say.
We're stuck in this endless cycle of just reused and repurposed content and IP, and we're going to talk about this. We're going to take a look at this article. It's making the rounds right now, and I do have to give a hat tip to Wes from Thinking Critical. He covered it the other day. I hadn't had a chance to actually sit down and read it myself, but it's interesting because I've been talking about this, and I was talking about it with our son before, about how it feels like every decade had its own personality and its own flavor until we got to the 2000s, and now we're in this endless rut, this endless cycle of just a mishmash of all these past decades, but there's nothing.
But done
unique.
poorly.
Like a Temu version of the 80s or 90s,
right?
And everybody wants the nostalgia. We talked about this the other day. We're listening to 80s music in the car, and I'm like, I think the Eurythmics have been in rotation in the last 10 years more than they were in the 80s. Like those songs
it
would
seem like that.
Right? Like Sweet Dreams. Okay, it was a big hit for
I would
like
say a lot of the 80s songs you hear them now more than you did in the 80s.
Yeah. It was a big hit for like a year or so, and then something new came along and they stopped playing the Eurythmics or whatever, right? Until they had a new single. Now it's like they play it all the time. I joked too, the one local station, they play every morning, Michael Jackson and Madonna every morning. That's and it's like we're getting more play now than we had back in the actual 80s.
You can count on it, like your trip to the bathroom after coffee.
I know. It's like, oh, I gotta take a dump and listen to Madonna. So anyway, this is Kneon. I'm here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about pop culture, the death of pop culture, and why things are not progressing forward for whatever reason. And now the mainstream media is even noticing, things kind of suck. They kind of suck right now. It took them long enough. It only took you like 10 years to figure out what the rest of us figured out. But 10 years ago, you would have been calling YouTubers bigots and Nazis for pointing out the obvious.
They were doing that 10 minutes ago. So, you know.
I know. Well, now the winds are changing. So anyway, we're going to talk about, before we get into it any further, please subscribe to Clownfish TV for more pop culture news, views, and rants. Guys, you'll get a woohoo if you do.
Woohoo?
All right. So this is coming from The Atlantic. The Atlantic. Is this the worst ever era of American pop culture?
Yes. Lately, yes. I mean, there's some great things I think are coming up too, but I think there's a couple things you have to remember as well. I don't know if they mentioned this in the article, but pop culture was pop culture because back for years before streaming and you had everything at once, and everybody watched the same things. So it was popular culture, the water cooler moments, everybody shared the same experiences, looked forward to the same shows. And we haven't had that since like the 2000s. And I think that's partly why it's changed. But now I think there's an era of people, like I know Gen Z really wants that back or wants to experience it because they never really got it. And that's why they want malls back. And that's why they want 80s stuff. And that's why they want pop culture. But they're getting it. They're just doing it poorly.
Yeah. And it's weird because you can't really, you can try to replicate it, but I guess it's one of those things like, unless you were actually there. Right. It's not going to be like it is on TV. And you guys are going to have to put up with a hell of a lot more cigarette smoke. And you're going to have to put up with not having phones, not having internet. But, I guess maybe they want like 80s plus. We want like the best of the 80s, 90s, but also the new technology. But yeah, there's no culture of their own, it feels like. I mean,
that's just it. It's like the culture
toilet.
is.
I mean, is that?
I guess in that regard, there is
Minecraft.
The TikTok stuff, and then like some of this gaming, I think, is their culture of their own. But I'm just like pop culture itself and what pop culture meant, and I think there's still aspects of it now, like Minecraft or different things that resonated. As everybody talks about, and the one thing. But a lot of it just feels like corporations trying to remanufacture things of the past. Yeah. But they're doing it poorly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's going on. But, you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say that on YouTube.
I just did.
You're a bigot Nazi. But no, I think that's actually part of the reason why the Minecraft movie blew up the way that it did, is that was one of the few cultural touchstones that kids had. Like, oh, this is ours, right? Like, this is our thing. It's our time now. It's our time. So we're going to chicken jockey the hell out of it. And yeah, because that's one of the few things I think for Gen Z and Gen Alpha that is very much theirs is Minecraft and all that. But yeah, this person, I can't pronounce this guy's name, but he's talking about the death of civilization. It usually starts with the death of creativity. And he says he's not alone in fearing that we've entered a cultural dark age. According to a YouGov poll, Americans rate the 2020s as the worst decade in a century for music, movies, fashion, TV, and sports.
I agree. I would agree, honestly. I mean, we're early into, halfway, I guess, at this point. Oh my gosh.
Well, we lost half of the.
Well, that's true too. The pandemic really pushed stuff back a couple years and stuff, and we had the strikes and all that as far as music or movies and TV go. But I would even say prior to that, like when they all started rehashing everything. So like the early to mid 2010s, I think you could even trace it back there, or even to earlier than that, where everything just kind of just went off the rails.
Yeah, I think it became easy. It became easy to just reuse. And again, this is what happens when we have a lot of bean counters in charge of.
Well, that's just it. They didn't want to take chances. They want to bet on a sure thing. What they didn't realize was when you want to bet on a sure thing, you need to make sure you bring that audience and gain a new audience. And they just wanted to flush the old audience for this new audience who doesn't care about it.
Right.
And then they would do it so crappy that of course they don't care about it because it sucked.
Yeah. Right. So the New York Times Magazine said we're in the least innovative, least transformative, least pioneering century for culture since the invention of the printing press.
Well, I agree.
An art critic for The Guardian said that avant-garde is dead. What's jarring about these declarations of malaise is that we should logically be in a renaissance. They're talking about the internet and how people have unfettered access to pretty much everything. And maybe that is the problem. Right? In and of itself is like,
it's just too much.
There's too much. Why make new stuff when you've got access to everything that's ever been made ever? Because remember, back in the day, each one of these decades, they were kind of isolated from each other because we didn't have, I guess, the permanence, the archival experience that we have now, where it's like, oh, that show, I've got it on DVD. I can watch it whenever I want to. It was like the songs were on the radio, they played on the radio, and then they were done. And then,
but even if you want to do new things, like I said, it's really hard to get it approved, to get it made. I mean, you can do it yourself, but then you're just lost in the sea of all the stuff. But even then, what are people going back to watching? We were talking about this before, like during the pandemic and stuff. Like the kids and stuff are going back to watch Friends and the shows that that were the pop culture touchstones because they still resonate today as much as they did then because they're just desperate for something that's fun and entertaining, and we're given a lot of slop, a lot of easy, a lot of cheap ass bullshit, and then if you don't love it, then you're a terrible person. It's like, no, we need new things. And I always think it's funny because they always talk about boomers, but I don't think they realize that the shows they keep rehashing were made by boomers, because the people who made the shows for our generation were boomers.
They were boomers, right? Yeah, and they made those shows because those shows a lot of times were reflecting their own experiences or their own interests. Star Wars, you look at George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, and the reason they had Nazis so much in their stuff is because they were coming out of World War II and they grew up in the 50s, and that's it was still fresh in people's minds, and we don't have a lot of now. I did tell our kids before, I said it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens with your generation in the future, because you guys had to go through the pandemic and how that's gonna shape things, and it could go either way.
I do think that's why we're partway through the 2020s. And besides the fact that, I think studios are just too lazy, and I think that there's just too much, but I think the pandemic really did throw a wrench into this decade too.
Yeah. Cause we missed the first third basically of this decade. And it just felt like everything was on pause.
You couldn't make anything. Unless you were like, you're independently, you couldn't make anything anyway.
Everything was shut down. Theaters were shut down. This was the big hit to come out of the pandemic. The cringy song with all the celebrities getting together singing John Lennon or whatever.
Oh no, what was that one show? Baskin. What was that? The show Carol Baskin and all that. That was what came out of it. Yeah, that's what came out. The thing is, it's like, I can't remember the show. My mind's just blank. I just think
King.
Tiger King, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple things like that, but for the most part, it was just everybody was on pause. I think, honestly, you can't compete with the pandemic. The pandemic was the defining event of this generation, and pop culture can't compete. But, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and it's going to be weird. And that's like, I said to the kids too. I said it's going to be very, very weird in 10 years to come across commercials or TV shows that were done during the pandemic, because it's very obvious it was done during the pandemic. You had people like standing away from each other, or you had, talk show hosts at home, and every freaking commercial reminded you that we're in a pandemic. Everybody's wearing a mask.
The commercials are going to be what's remembered from this decade.
And then they just like magically overnight like disappear. But it was like, yes, we get it. We're all stuck in our houses. We're all wearing masks. It sucks. Okay. We're all in it together. We freaking get it. But could you stop reminding us?
Right?
Life sucks right now. Could you just stop?
I was thinking about like how they rehash everything. Okay. For example, even Monster High. Okay. Monster High came out like the late 2000s, into like the early mid 2010s. And it wasn't that long ago. And I would say it was a pop culture phenomenon, because there was a lot of people watch the shows, and the toys sold like hotcakes. It was insane. And then fast forward to 2022, and then they bring it back again. But now it's just a more modern take on it. And it's just the prime example is that we're talking like a few years, and they couldn't even think of something new.
Yeah. I mean, when they're rebooting shows from like 10 years ago, it's bad.
It wasn't even 10 years.
No.
I guess it was, but it hadn't ended even 10 years.
And then we're like, why do they keep rebooting shows from our childhood, but worse? And this is why. We're just in this stagnant stage. And the author of the piece is talking about, they understand like when they were in the 2000s, they're really big into Radiohead and Wilco, and those bands aren't as relevant to pop culture at large as they used to be. But he's even like, I can't deal with TikTok, and it seems like it's making everybody a lot dumber. And they said that this is usually a precursor to a collapse of an empire, which just shitty movies and shitty comic books, guys.
Yeah, I don't think that's what happened before like the Roman Empire fell or whatever. But I mean, the stagnation makes sense. I was just thinking, you said about records and music and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but meanwhile, how many shirts, like they're selling Blondie shirts, and they're selling, different shirts from different singers and stuff from the 80s, like hotcakes.
Like even at Walmart, for crying out loud. It's so weird. Like, I was very proud of my kids for knowing some of the bands that I loved growing up. I'm also like, a lot of the groups I loved growing up, I love them because my mom loved them, and she worked in a record shop, right? So like I was
but even the alt stuff in that was like, edgy stuff that was, they're like listening to it too now. And it's funny to me, because then you tell them, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this was on the radio, and they're like, what?
Like, tell us more, Father. Tell us the legend.
I know, right?
Tell us like the legend of Korn on the radio.
Tron was not something I thought I'd see. But,
right? But yeah, I mean, it's weird because they're some of the music they're into now, and I don't know if it's because of TikTok or what. But I'm like, did I talk about that? I used to be a DJ, and
I know you didn't have to tell me about it. I was there.
I was a DJ, but I don't know if people knew. Like so I had like a massive. I mean, I'm talking, you can vouch, massive collection of CDs.
He did.
That I collected over the years, and a lot of stuff was, pretty indie, pretty underground. I had a little bit of everything, but we sold all of it before we moved, because I'm like, well, everything's going digital now. I don't need to hold on to all these CDs, and now they're going for a fortune. But like our daughter, she was like, wait, you had this, and you had this, and you had this one, and I'm like, I had like everything.
No, it was funny. Our kids went and bought vinyl. And then our daughter was like, oh, okay, I like CDs now. So they have vinyl and CDs. And then she wanted a Hello Kitty, like little tape deck thing that actually I almost bought her when she was a toddler. And it plays cassettes. So she wanted cassettes too. The only thing that they haven't got to yet is 8 tracks.
Just give it time. People collect 8 tracks too.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, they're all about the CDs. They're all about the cassettes. I mean, mostly CDs. But it's insane because they were like all vinyl before, And it was back before like the big, surge in vinyl. Now you see vinyl records everywhere, but it was so weird when you started seeing vinyl records reappear in the stores. It was just the weirdest thing.
They're talking about the Stranger Things effect.
Yeah,
and how
I think
Stranger
that's part
Things.
of it.
Yeah, Stranger Things is reigniting interest in the 80s, and they talk about Kate Bush, running up that hill. I am very proud. Both of our kids knew that was Kate Bush when the first time they heard it. I'm like, you should know this one. I'm quizzing you.
They did, and it was actually
like, you should know.
Squid King had another version that he liked, that he knew the song, but he knew it was her. But there was another version he liked that he had on his playlist that he listened to all the time of that song.
Yeah.
So he was like, they knew it immediately.
Yeah, it was so weird because I'm like, oh, it's Kate Bush. I haven't heard this one in a long time.
See, the reason pop culture is still alive at our house is because we make it alive at our house. And a lot of it that they get on TikTok and stuff. Like, there is a resurgence of different like music stars and stuff from the 80s, and it's because one of their songs blew up on TikTok because some TikToker likes their song and it blows up again. And I think the pop culture and the like you said, cultural touch points or touchstones are more like things that are on TikTok or as like Minecraft or some video games and stuff like that. I think it's still there, and it's the stuff that stands out because it's its own thing. But they keep pushing in Hollywood and they keep pushing in the media and stuff that we need to just, take the wheel and make it a new wheel, but now with like more rainbow colors on it or something. Instead of understanding that even the people today, they want their own things. They want their own new things that everybody can connect with. And when they find that, you get the Minecraft chicken jockey moments.
I think like we didn't have a choice, right? Like it just like the culture happened, especially in the 80s. A lot of it
we were lucky to be there in the 80s.
Yeah, we were.
In the 90s, I'd say.
But it was when you were a kid, it was. Now I do remember in the 80s that the 50s were big because that was retro, and Back to the Future was a big part of that. Kind of Back to the Future kind of was, I think, setting a tone for what Stranger Things would do.
It kind of now, yes.
Yeah, because it was like 30 years in the
And the 90s was the 70s.
Was the 70s, and that's because of that 70s show, I think, and because some of the music, like Lenny Kravitz, I remember he had like the 70s style clothes, and that was so like in the beginning of the 90s we had grunge, and then we also had like 70s style clothes, and then by the end of it we got this kind of like weird retro style, and then we started getting into the boy band stuff, but then like whatever we were wearing in 1999 2000 we were wearing in 2010.
Yeah, this is it. Like I think early 2000s, you hit like early 2000s a little bit with some of the like the iconic stuff, the looks and things. I can still see things from Mean Girls as being somewhat iconic, but then after that, it just kind of just stopped.
Yeah, there was a video on YouTube, and I have to go find it. I can't remember who did it off the top of my head, but they were going through and they said, basically there were all kinds of theories about why pop culture stopped in 2000. It seems like we've basically just been kind of, the record's been skipping since then. And now everything is just kind of a pastiche of everything from these decades. Whereas every decade of the 20th century was very unique. You could take a look at somebody's
80s
clothes.
had like how many different movements in one decade? I mean, it was.
Oh yeah.
80s were insane.
Punk and glam and preppy. And it was all over the place. And I could you could show me an outfit and I could tell you like exactly what year probably is from.
Well, that's what I think what's going on now is because they don't have that now. Like these kids like want that. Like our daughter was in the 80s stuff and now she's in the 90s stuff. And the 90s clothing fashion is starting to be repurposed. I mean, pretty much exactly like it was. I mean, my sister was joking. There are pieces that look exactly like the ones she had. They weren't even changed. And, I think they're just looking to them it's new. You know what I mean? So they're just looking for something to glom onto because they don't have their own like very iconic and this is definitely 80s. This is definitely 90s. Look, this is definitely 2020s. They don't have that.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, a lot of people have been wondering this. Some people have tinfoil hat theories that there's a glitch in the matrix, but I think I think I actually agree with this core that I think it has something to do with globalization, and the internet I think actually helped in some ways kill creativity because we had access to everything, right?
So like video killed the radio star kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much.
The modern
internet
version. Killed
creativity. When you've got everything ever made basically at your fingertips, and people like you have no idea. Like your phone is capable of playing like every piece of media in human history.
You don't have to be creative because AI.
No. And that's the thing too.
That's
easier.
Scary.
And that might be part of it. It might be it's easier now than it's ever been, because they talk about how much technology has advanced, but it's easier now than it's ever been to create things. But there's also no challenge in getting things made other than, oh, did I get enough upvotes on this? Did I get,
Yeah. And back in the day, you didn't have as many things created, but the things that you had created were like everybody loved or knew about, which is what you got those pop culture moments from. Now, except for like a breakthrough thing here and there, it's a lot of noise.
Yeah. And yeah, that's true too. Cause we talk about, 80s pop culture, and we talk about, talk about sitcoms. Obviously, everybody was kind of watching the same stuff because we only had, 3 channels, most of us 4 channels. And also the toy lines. Like, yeah, we had a whole aisle of G.I. Joe and Barbie because they were like the major toy brands at the time. It was so, yeah, there weren't, 50 little brands competing for shelf space. It was like, you've had your major brands, your G.I. Joe, your Turtles, your Transformers, and each kind of had their own aisle. Like, Star Wars.
Yeah, they're talking like a huge section, or like a whole aisle. Barbie would have a whole aisle, and now it's just a little section of an aisle.
Floor to ceiling. To ceiling. And
fashions would be like the size of just the fashions alone for Barbie, or the furniture for the dollhouses would be about the size of the Barbie section at Walmart now.
Yeah, and you go to Walmart or Target even, and you look at like the different sections for each of the toys. Like, oh, this is the boy aisle. Okay, there's Transformers, and it's like 10 pegs, or whatever.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's He-Man's 3. Yeah.
He-Man's like a 3 pegger. Yeah, it's Fisto, Ram Man, and Clamp Champ, 3 pegs. But you just got that. You're laughing.
No, I got it initially. It was funny.
But there's so much, and so much of it now is like adult collectibles kind of mixed in with the kids stuff, and the kids aren't buying the toys, and it's it's
not
weird.
Like they used to.
It's a weird time. It's just that we're living in this era of remixes. Everything's being remixed. And like I said, we're listening to songs now longer than we would have listened to them naturally back in the day, because they came and went. They were on the radio. That was it. They'd have new videos on MTV. I remember they used to do premieres. That was like a big thing. They'd have the MTV world premiere video.
MTV used to play videos like, it was actually music television.
Yeah.
Once upon a time.
And it was exciting because like, oh my God, I get to see the new Pearl Jam video for the first time ever. And then you had to kind of catch the videos when they were on, because they would only play them for maybe a month, 2 months maybe, and then they rotate them out with other videos. Then you'd have to watch like the throwback episodes or something to see the old videos. So yeah, you had to basically, I think what it is you had to live in the moment.
Yeah, back now it's just,
yeah, you had to live in the moment. Now we've got an archive of every moment ever. So we're always living in the past. We don't really have to live in the present. We don't have to really pay attention.
The connections between people were different too. Like now everything is like, oh, I talked to them on, the chat or whatever. I'm going to talk to them on texting because it's better that way. When we were there, and even before us, you'd have to talk face to face. You'd have to call somebody. You'd have to, you'd talk about it at work. You talk about it at school. I think that those connections solidified. Because you'd be like real excited about I can't wait to go to work to talk about this tomorrow. It was solidified that pop culture. And now it's just like, you have to find the same group of people you might have friends, like maybe one of their friends interested in the same thing you're interested in. And except for, like I said, there's so much, except for, a couple things. Most people don't even have that in common anymore. Like everybody kind of had it in common before. Now it's not there. The commonality is not there now.
I feel like we're more connected than we've ever been with the internet, but I feel like everybody is a lot lonelier than they used to be.
I think everybody just talks and doesn't listen.
Yeah. What?
Yeah, I know, right? I just think the reason pop culture is dead is because, or pop culture is dying, is because the reason for it, the reason it existed initially, and the reason it came to be, a lot of those reasons are gone.
Yeah.
And then when they try to recreate it, they do a really, really terrible job of it.
It's like painting from memory versus painting from a reference or a model, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're not going to you might get the basic form right, but you're not going to get the details right, because you need to actually see it, experience it. And so what we're seeing is, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And we really are living Ready Player One. That's what it feels like.
Yeah. It's just they're just trying to cash in on it all and find a way to make money on it. And you like that, didn't you? You know, nostalgia bait and all that crap, member berries and things. And I just think that there's just so much, and people they just don't get as excited about things as they used to, because they know there's going to be 100 other things in like a month anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just consume and throw away.
Pretty much. I think that's it. Back then we used to, buy things. We would buy things that we wanted to keep. We didn't have this, like even our appliances, our, clothes, whatever. It wasn't like you'd buy something and you knew you'd just get rid of it. My phone, I'm going to buy it for now. I'm going to, trade my phone in a year to get a better phone. It was like, no, you buy a telephone, your family's going to have that telephone for like 10 years, right? You buy that refrigerator, you're going to pass that damn refrigerator down to your grandkids. That's how it was back then. Now it's just like, this is this month's model of whatever.
It's like tissue culture, blow and throw.
Well, yes, there's a lot of ways I could go. Cars too. I've noticed cars are that way too. They're built really cheap. You blow and throw? You blow and throw, yeah. They're built cheap, and they're like, wow, you've been driving the same car for 3 years. I'm like, people used to drive the same car for like 30 years. What is, but they're not built to last anymore, so nothing is.
You've been driving the same car for a while.
10 years now, I think.
We still have the same car we've had for a long, long time.
Well, yeah, but that's me, and my grandparents raised me, so... That's it. I'm old.
I only had to get a new one because my other one got wrecked. So
that was my fault.
No, it wasn't. I ran a red light.
You ran a red light.
Not Neon. Somebody ran a red light and hit him in my car. So they had to
things had gone just a little bit differently. That there would be a fewer hosts on Clownfish TV probably. So thankfully that did not work out that way. But anyway, are we gonna wrap this up?
Yep.
I think we need to wrap this up. So there we go, guys. What are your thoughts on this? I think it's very obvious to anyone who watches this channel that things aren't great right now. But why? Why do you think that is? Leave a comment. Let us know. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. We'll talk later.
Bye.
For more pop culture news, views, and rants, go to news.clownfishtv.com. That's news.clownfishtv.com.